Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live and doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson at 3, and all this before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. And tonight, stay tuned at 6 for the Just Help One radio show and podcast presented by the Union Rescue Mission. I'll be on again tonight at 6 with the CEO of the Union Rescue Mission, Mark Hood. You can support Union Rescue Mission at justhelpone.org. Right now, it's Mottek On Money for you, live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Another winner today for the stock market, with the Dow popping 84 points higher, settling at 40,753. The S&P 500 up 35 at 5604, and the NASDAQ up 264 points at 17,710. The tech-heavy NASDAQ leading the charge today, as some of the biggest names in the tech world came out with better-than-expected earnings, including Microsoft, which had a big pop today, and Meta also moving sharply higher. After the closing bell, Apple in the spotlight today, posting better-than-expected earnings. After the closing bell on strong iPhone sales, Amazon shares pulling back in after-hours trading after the cloud and e-commerce company's second quarter operating income came in below Wall Street analyst expectations. Watching the situation on the tariff front, with the U.S. approaching China, seeking talks over President Trump's 145% tariffs, according to a social media account affiliated with the Chinese government-run state media, potentially signaling Beijing's openness to negotiations. According to the Reuters news service, the U.S. has proactively reached out to China through multiple channels, hoping to hold discussions on the tariff issue. That was the post published on the official Weibo social media account. That's the Chinese government-run state media site. The Los Angeles and Long Beach port complex, handling about a third of America's container shipments, expected to be hit hard by the drop in commerce between the U.S. and China that we're already seeing. The World Trade Organization estimates that if the trade war with China continues, they're expecting the U.S. and China trade to decrease by about 80%, according to the head of the LAEDC. That is Stephen Chung, who frequently appears on this program. Recently, the director of the Port of Los Angeles, Gene Soroka, said cargo vessels arriving at the port on the West Coast here will plunge by more than a third over the next week. Gene Soroka telling CNBC the port expects a 35% drop in cargo from Asia next week. We'll be joined live later this hour by Mario Cordero, who's the CEO of the Port of Long Beach, an international maritime industry leader, who will give us an update on what's happening at the Port of Long Beach, which, of course, makes up the huge complex, including the Port of Long Beach and the Port of Los Angeles. Also this hour, a giant in the world of music will be joining us on the air, one of the most loved performers in the world, Engelbert Humperdinck. Yep, he happens to live right here in Southern California. He's set to perform 60 concerts around the world this year, continuing the Last Waltz Farewell Tour he started last year. He'll be performing at the Saban Theater in Beverly Hills on June 14th. You can get your tickets, and he'll be joining us live later this hour to tell us more about it. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, Apple's earnings out this afternoon, and the whole works. Joining us live, Jonathan HOENIG, Fox News contributor, portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund, and author of the book Price is Primary: How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time. Jonathan HOENIG, thank you very much for taking the call here today.
Frank, it's great to be with you, and really a historic month. I mean, some of the most wild swings we've seen, and you see it probably best in tech stocks. You know, since the 8th of April, the tech stocks are up almost 15%, you know, in just less than a month, but they're still down almost 6% year to date. And it's been all about tariffs, Frank, and I think it will continue to be all about tariffs for, you know, for the foreseeable future.
On the live with Jonathan HOENIG, coming off a rough month of April, a very volatile month, but now we've seen this pretty decent rally over the last week or so for the major stock market averages, some coming out of correction territory, with the tech names leading the way here. And you, of course, guided this audience very expertly on the Mag 7, and we did see that downturn, which you were concerned about it. And now this rebound here on earnings news. Take a look at Meta, for example, at more than $23 today at $5.72 and change. Microsoft popping more than $30 today at $4.25 and change. And then Apple out with earnings this afternoon. Give us your thoughts here on the Mag 7 names.
Well, big picture, Frank, I mean, the majority of stocks are still below their 200 and their 50-day moving average. And even in a day like today, as you said, now the market's up, 5-6 days in a row, you still got more new lows than new highs, about 76 new lows, only 45 new highs. So, everyone has to do his and her own evaluation, do their own research. But I do think that this is a bear market rally within the U.S., and I'm putting money to work over at capitalisppig.com, but it's not in those Mag 7 names. Apple, the news after the bell, is probably the best example. I think there's money to be made in the markets, Frank, but I don't think it's going to be made in these names that have been so good for so long. Many of them now, quite weak year to date. Apple's a great example. This was a stock that's led for years, Frank, but year to date, it's down 12%. Off another 4% year to date. I'm looking at things like shipping stocks, Japan, Finland, emerging markets. To me, that's where the next big bull market's going to be.
Very interesting. On Apple, we did see that stock close higher today of 82 cents at 213 and change, but it's pulled back about $9 now in after-hours trading, 204.47. Anything that you've picked up on their earnings call this afternoon?
Well, it's at the dip. And Frank, this ironically is when most people feel comfortable buying a stock. For some reason, we look at a stock that goes from 240 to 213, like Apple, and we say, oh, this is a dip. This isn't what I want to be buying it. But, Frank, historically, that is the worst time you want to be stepping into stocks. We never know when a dip is just a dip or the beginning of something more nefarious, like a real long-term bear market. And I think Tesla is probably the best example of that. I mean, Tesla shares have been absolutely obliterated this year, Frank, despite, a bit of a comeback, still down some 26% year to date. And when assets start to fall that much, the math simply works against you. I mean, Tesla was down at 1.50%, and we know it takes 100% gain to get back from a 50% decline. So once again, I'm looking at things like TK. This is a shipping stock trading at a fraction of the valuation of some of the Mag 7 names are. I think things like that are going to be the big winners this year, not the Mag 7, which have held investor interest for far too long, and I think their day has come, their day is gone.
That's very interesting. As you may have heard me say at the beginning here, a lot of concerns about shipping traffic between China and the U.S. At this point, we'll have the director of the Port of Long Beach on this program live later this hour. What attracts you to the shipping stocks given the current environment?
Well, ironically, Frank, many of them are starting to bottom out and doing well despite that news. Ardmore Shipping, ASC is another one that we own over at Capitalist Pig. And, you always want to do your own research and do your own due diligence. But, that's, I think, is why I always focus on price, Frank. And price often surprises us. Germany is the best example. I mean, German stocks are far outperforming the U.S. I mean, German stocks are up some 15-18% year to date, despite the fact that the news out of Germany is very bleak. I mean, it's been in a recession now for months, but yet we're seeing a lot of European stocks far outperform the U.S. So that's why, we wrote the book, Price is Primary, and why I think you really want to focus on what's doing well and what's moving, not necessarily where the story is the best.
You're live with Jonathan HOENIG, Fox News contributor and portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund. And, that terrific book is called Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset in Any Market at Any Time. But what about this deal between the U.S. and Ukraine now? There's nervousness now with Russia chiming in, criticizing this deal. Looks like the rare earth metals companies were in focus this morning following that deal announcement yesterday. Any thoughts about that space at this point?
Well, what worries me, Frank, is central planning writ large. We used to make fun of the East German Trabant in this country. We used to make fun of central planning, and we saw, what the net result has always been, that the most free countries, economically free, has always been the most prosperous. So, I'm very worried about the situation in Ukraine. I'm worried about the war in Ukraine, certainly unrest in Israel as well. But ironically, the Middle East is a great example, I think, where there's going to be a lot of money made. I think you can invest in Israel right now. EIS is a stock fund that I like, and I own we own over at Capital Spig. But I also think some of the other Middle Eastern countries, for example, like Qatar, Frank, QAT is the ticker symbol of the fund that tracks the Qatar market, or even UAE, that is the United Arab Emirates ETF. I think you can put money to work right there right now. That's been breaking out as of late. And to me, that's what I always like to focus on, Frank. What's working, but things that no one's really talking about. So I think perhaps due to the president, perhaps just due to greater issues in overall development, I think a lot of money is going to be made in the Middle East in the coming months.
Nobody's talking about it except right here, live on the air, 790 KBC, on the air live with Jonathan HOENIG. And turning to the Middle East for a moment, the bulletin this afternoon, the Iran-U.S. nuclear talks have been postponed for logistical reasons. We're told a fourth round of Iran-U.S. talks over Iran's nuclear program has been postponed. And in the meantime, President Trump announced today that any country that buys oil from Iran will not be allowed to do business with the United States. And this has impacted the price of oil today, moving lower, cracked below $60 a barrel yesterday, and right now hovering at around 58 and change. What do you see happening here on the price of oil and energy prices overall?
Well, I'll just emphasize, one other name in the Middle East, Frank. I mean, look, I look at the Middle East much as I think China was in the early 1990s, in the mid 1990s. Really starting to make a transformation. Keep in mind, China did very well for many, many years because of it was liberalizing. And I look at the Middle East as very much the same way. I mean, in many ways, it's very backward. I mean, forget even the way they treat women. Frank, this whole area of Islamic finance it's very backward by modern standards. And I think that poses some opportunity. So, for example, one more fund I'll mention is KWT, that's Kuwait. That's a publicly traded fund here in the United States. I think offers great opportunity. It's up about 12% year to date, right near that 52-week high. That's a good time to buy, in my belief. And once again, as you said, really no public interest, no everyone talking about it and pounding the table on it. So that's where I like to focus on things that are working. No one's taking really advantage of. And I think the Middle East is a great example. KWT, another one. Do your own due diligence. But I think the weakness in oil, Frank, is something ironically to be concerned about. I mean, it's telegraphing a weakness here at home, not just even in terms of oil, but in terms of the economy. And, there was a AP survey out this week, Frank, that half of Americans now expect a recession in this country right now. So despite all this talk of, a great, economic growth from the White House, most Americans are buttoned up and believe that recession is, if not here, it's at least 50% believe it's on the way.
Very interesting, and of course, the volatility doesn't help the mood either. The VIX index has seen those sharp spikes, and we've seen these big moves in both directions over the last month or so. As is the case with pretty much a normal day for cryptos, but Bitcoin's held up pretty well in all this lately, back above 96,000. Here's something to brighten your day if you have Bitcoin. Bitcoin right now hovering at around 96,334. I know you keep an eye on what's happening in the crypto space. Give us your thoughts here on these latest moves.
Well, wow. I mean, it's been very impressive to me, Frank. In fact, Bitcoin, and it's up 24% in just the last month. That talking about Bitcoin, and a lot of the 20-day highs, which historically tend to turn into 60-day highs and 100-day highs, are crypto-related stocks right now. So, look, I can't say that I own a lot of them, that I'm investing a lot, but you always have to, as we say, respect the tape. And Bitcoin has come up quite a bit right now, and I don't think you fight that trend. For whatever reason, whether it's consolidation, whether it's dollar weakness, or just an area that has some strength, I think you have to respect Bitcoin, and a lot of the Bitcoin-related names have come up quite dramatically and could prosper, whether it be, who knows, once again, because of legislation or regulation. If I was putting money to work right now, I don't think you poo-poo Bitcoin. I think it's showing some strength and some growth that is likely, at least in the short term, to continue.
All right, and now there's a new ETF, or going to be a new ETF on XRP, right? Are you watching that one? And it looks like, according to the latest report, the SEC has delayed altcoin ETFs until June, according to one report. What about these latest offerings?
not as strong as Bitcoin, interestingly. I mean, XRP, Ripple, if you will, XRP up only 5% today, year to date, and not as strong as Bitcoin. So, I think for most people, Frank, if you're going to invest in crypto, I think you want to invest in the best of the best. I think that is Bitcoin. Not top of my list, but I think, the march towards 100,000 Bitcoin seems almost inevitable given its strength as of late. So I know you talk to some of the, as you always say, the biggest bulls and the biggest bears. I'm somewhere in the middle when it comes to crypto, but I think if it's something that you're truly bullish on, I think Bitcoin is where you want to be, and much more than even a derivative like, for example, MicroStrategy. Strategy, I think, is an unnecessary step removed. If you want to be long Bitcoin, I think own Bitcoin, but don't own a derivative and don't own a Ripple or anything else other than the asset itself, if you will. Just
drink Ripple and don't necessarily own it. All right, and we go from so-called digital gold to analog gold. Gold, of course, had that epic run up to record highs above 3,500 this year. Now, let me take a look. 3,246 and change, up 24 and change here at the moment. What about good old analog gold here at this price?
All-time highs is a bullish indicator, Frank. I mean, when we look at assets making all-time highs, chances are it's in the offing to make more all-time highs. So, I think with something like gold, you have to have some patience. It's been very much in the news. It was on the cover of Barron's this past week or in the last week or so. So the public, I think, is certainly on board. So I actually like platinum, PPLT.
No Contest Wrestling. O'Shea Jackson Jr. and TJ Jefferson with the biggest names in the game.
Give it up for the Dark Angel.
First one.
First.
I can't believe it.
NXT double champion. Welcome to King. Lexus King.
I don't know if I'd be where I'm at now if I didn't take the path that I took.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jada Parker.
What made you, after the soccer career, go WWE?
The answer I always have to that is why not?
The No Contest Wrestling Podcast, part of the Rich Eisen Podcast Network. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Is under the headline that a rising tide lifts all boats. I think platinum offers a lot more value. Same thing with platinum and palladium. Ticker symbols there are PPLT and PALL. You always want to do your own due diligence. Don't make it an all or none. But I think, as I said, a rising tide lifts all boats. I do see higher prices for gold long-term, but even shorter-term. I think platinum and palladium, if the precious metals bull market continues, I think you could see some big moves there, moves that similar to that you've seen to gold in the last couple of months.
All right. Anything else you'd like to mention on the bond front or currencies? Anything else that's being discussed that's getting your attention now?
Sure. Well, I mean, one of the big ideas is that international stocks have outperformed the U.S., both stocks and bonds. So something like BWX or CEW, those are both ETFs that are far outperforming but not getting a lot of attention. And one more I'll mention is Africa. AFK is that ETF. It's quite strong, and as we always say, it's very much under the radar screen. So if you're looking for places to put money, I think a lot of these emerging markets I think are strong and are breaking out and not trading at the valuations that even the NVIDIA 10, 15, 20% off of its 52-week high. These aren't cheap stocks. Africa, Europe, they are, and that's where I'm putting money to work.
Very interesting. Giving us a lot to think about. KWT Kuwait. That has not been in the news for quite some time, so we'll take a closer look at that and the other ones you mentioned here, Jonathan. Thank you very, very much for that thorough analysis as always and for taking the call live with us here. That's Jonathan Hoenig, Fox News contributor, Fox Business contributor, portfolio manager at Capitalist Pig Hedge Fund. The book is Price is Primary, How to Profit with Any Asset at Any Market at Any Time. Jonathan Hoenig, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Always great to be on KABC. And, Frank, I'm not just a guest of Mottek On Money. I'm a listener as well. So great to be with you.
That's so wonderful. Your fan club's going to be gathering next week at the Milken Institute Global Conference. So hopefully we'll be in touch there. Jonathan, thank you very much. And we'll hope to talk to you very, very soon live here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues 790 KABC. The stock market rebound continued today with the Dow up another 84 points. Back to 40,753. S&P 500 of 35 at 5604. And the NASDAQ leading the charge higher today of 264 points, 17,710. Price of gold hovering at around 3,245 and change. Taking a look at the price of oil, it has dipped again today, down 43 cents, back to 58.81 a barrel. Apple in the spotlight after the closing bell on Wall Street, out with its earnings news. The stock closed up 82 cents to $213.32. It's down about $9 to $204 and change in after-hours trading. This after Apple reported earnings that beat Wall Street analysts' expectations, but Apple's closely watched services division came up a bit short compared to what analysts were expecting. Shares of the iPhone maker fell as much as 4% this afternoon. Taking a look at Tim Cook providing Apple's first comments on the impact of tariffs on Apple's business on the earnings call with analysts today, saying the company saw limited impact, in his words, in the March quarter because it was able to optimize its supply chain. Apple expects overall revenue to grow low to mid-single digits on an annual basis during the current quarter ending in June. Company also expects a gross margin to come in at 46%, taking into account tariff costs. Apple expects tariffs to add $900 million to its cost for the current quarter, assuming no new tariffs or other major changes occur. Among the stocks that popped today, big names like Meta moving up more than $23 at $572 and change, and Microsoft popping more than $30 at $425 and change. This on better than expected earnings. And now the latest news on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC, watching business between the U.S. and China very closely here. China may be open to entering trade talks with the U.S., boosting hopes that the world's two largest economies will be able to strike a deal on tariffs, according to a state media outlet in China today. Meanwhile, the ports of L.A. and Long Beach, which handle about a third of the nation's container shipments, expected to be hit hard by the drop in commerce already seen between the U.S. and China. The World Trade Organization estimates that if this trade war with China continues, they're expecting the U.S. and China trade to decrease by about 80%. We did hear from the director of the Port of Los Angeles, Gene Soroka, recently, who said cargo vessels arriving at the port on the U.S. West Coast will plunge by more than a third over the next week. What's happening at the Port of Long Beach? Well, let's find out live right now from the head of the Port of Long Beach. Joining us live now, I'm delighted to say we have Mario Cordero, the CEO of the Port of Long Beach, on the line with us here. An international maritime industry leader who's been running the Port of Long Beach since 2017. Before that, he chaired the Federal Maritime Commission, the job he took after leading the Long Beach Board of Harbor Commissioners. Mario Cordero, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Well, thank you for having me, Frank.
Wonderful to have you with us here again at this critical moment. Give us an update on what's happening there at the Port of Long Beach.
Well, we're going to start seeing reduced cargo volume, and that's because of 34 canceled sailings at least through June. So it's very concerning because when you have less volume, it's going to be an impact on jobs, and it's going to be impact on the economy. And of course, ultimately for the consumer, whether or not they're going to have those products on the shelf here, if in fact we continue with the trajectory of these high tariff discussions.
You, of course, were leading the Port of Long Beach at the time of the COVID pandemic and the crisis there with all those ships backed up off the coast. Are we seeing or are we going to see a similar situation this time around?
Well, I don't believe we're going to see a situation where we're going to have vessels backed up, assuming, of course, this tariff policy brings some certainty and clarity in the coming months. However, I do believe that in certain cases, the crisis here could exceed what we experienced in COVID-19. I'm talking about the canceled sailings, and that is less vessel calls coming to the San Pedro Bay complex, which will translate to less products for the consumer and, of course, durable goods for the business enterprises.
You think it's going to be worse? And, of course, during COVID, the entire global economy was shut down. It'll be worse than that, you think?
Well, you're already seeing that the IMF has indicated or reduced the global GDP expectations from 2.7% to 1.8% for this year. And every association or think tank has now estimated a reduced GDP not only on the global side, but for the U.S. So I think, again, if we act quickly and address these issues, I think we could avoid worse scenarios. So I trust the administration is already starting to hear from multiple advocates in the business sector that something has to be done, again, to avoid a crisis if we continue with this uncertainty and these high tariff numbers that we're seeing, particularly with the two superpowers. I'm talking about China and the USA.
On there live with Mario Cordero, the CEO of the Port of Long Beach. And we saw the reports that retailers, major American retailers, have now stopped all shipments from China. Is that correct? And what's the impact you're seeing there?
That is correct. There's been a pause in certain beneficial cargo owners with regard to the orders, only because, again, they're in a wait-and-see scenario. Everybody's hoping that, in fact, we address this tariff policy in a more pragmatic way, which will be reduced costs for the business sector and the business enterprises, which translates to reduced costs for consumers, because if we do not do anything, aside from the low cargo volume that's coming in here or projected to come into the San Pedro Bay complex, we are going to have higher prices for the consumer.
Remember speaking to you when you chaired the Federal Maritime Commission, which also was a big job. What do you see happening around the world in all of this? Is this going to slow down the entire world economy?
It definitely will. I mean, you're already seeing that. So it's not just a West Coast issue. It would impact every U.S. port, whether you're in the Gulf or in the East. And, of course, China, the port of origin in Asia, whether it's Vietnam or whether it's China, I think it's a definitely impact to global trade and the global economy.
It's hard to believe it's already May 1st today, and the year got off to a roaring start with expectations that business was going to be booming and so forth. And last time we spoke, you had a very impressive growth story to tell there at the Port of Long Beach. Tell us, we were at record highs, right, earlier this year, and now this. What's the expectation here for the rest of the year?
Well, you're correct, Frank. For the first quarter of 2025, Long Beach was the busiest port in the country. The expectation right now for the second half of the year is we may be looking to a 20% reduction in volume. But that reduction is going to be across the board. It's going to impact every U.S. port in the country. You're already seeing that UBS has indicated that there could be a 20% reduction in imports to the country. So again, it's not just a local issue. It's a serious economic issue on the national front, and, of course, the international front also.
All of this as Los Angeles continues to recover slowly and painfully from the horrific fire disaster here. What do you see ahead on that front? We were expecting, of course, a lot of materials to be brought into Southern California for the rebuilding and all that. What do you see as far as the overall economic impact of this now, the tariff situation laid on top of all that?
Well, when you're looking at 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel, and tariffs overall on construction products, be it lumber, concrete, and all the imported material that comes into the United States, that's going to impact the recovery here in Los Angeles. And specifically, I'm talking about the price of that recovery. So again, hopefully we avoid worse scenarios here. I mean, on the positive side, the president has been more conciliatory, has stepped back with regard to certain tariffs, has indicated exemption to electronic items and products. So that gives you an indication. I think the administration is watching this closely.
Hey there, I'm Paula Pant, host of the Afford Anything podcast. I help people make the smartest money decisions possible.
You should not do the 401k loan.
Reason number 4,872. Are we heading for a recession?
You'd be shocked.
Dumping it into the house?
Invest in flipping houses.
Mathematically the better option.
Paula Pant's really keeping us in business.
Because face it, money's too important to wing it. Review your budget.
Take the reins.
Sharpen your skills.
Do the things.
Start a side hustle
that will affect your life.
Right. Afford Anything. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
As you indicated at the beginning of your show, China now has acknowledged that there may be some room now to come to the table and negotiate. But again, the next 30 to 60 days will be paramount with regard to how this impacts the second half of the year.
We'll keep an open line to you. Thank you very much for taking the call here at this critical moment. That is Mario Cordero, the CEO of the Port of Long Beach. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Turning out to the music business and joining us now, one of the biggest names and most loved performers in the world, Engelbert Humperdinck, who happens to live right here in Southern California, set to perform 60 concerts around the world this year, continuing the Last Waltz farewell tour he started last year. He'll be performing at the Saban Theater in Beverly Hills coming up on June 14th. I have to say, it's always a great day when you hear Engelbert Humperdinck is on the line. Engelbert, thank you very much for taking the call here. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. A bit excited about my future. Tomorrow's a big day for me. My birthday tomorrow.
What an honor! What an honor to have the chance to be among the first to wish you a very happy birthday and all the very, very best.
Yes, it'll be my 89th birthday.
God bless you, Engelbert Humperdinck. What are you planning to do tomorrow?
Well, we're having a gathering at the house, with the family and friends, and always for my birthday, my family make an effort to get to see me, and they're here. They're all here now.
I'm sure it's going to be a wonderful celebration, and those who love you in the music world will also have a chance to celebrate already next month. You're going to be performing in concert here in Beverly Hills on June 14th at the Saban Theater. Tell us about your upcoming concert here.
Well, I tell you what, every time I appear there, it's such a fantastic. I just love appearing there. It's great to be near home.
I had the honor of seeing you there last year, and you are absolutely terrific on stage, and all of the favorite songs are absolutely wonderful. And anything special planned for the concert coming up on June 14th?
Well, I've just finished a new album with Cleopatra Records, and I'll be doing a couple of songs from that particular album. It's a kind of music I've never recorded before. Songs of the big bands of the 80s, like Aerosmith and Journey and Cars, and things. Took some of the great songs up there and recorded them, and it seems to be going down very well in the audience.
That is very big news. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so we're going to be hearing some new songs that you've recently recorded. That is absolutely fantastic. And tell us how long you've been doing this now, 50 plus years?
58 years, my friend. Yeah, 58 years.
And it started, the big hit at the beginning, refresh my memory, was it Release Me?
It was Release Me, and it was massive all over the world, thank God. And it also has the history of beating the Beatles to number one with their 13th release. And I did, and the almighty Beatles. Can you imagine that? And nobody came up and beat them to number one. And it's just a wonderful part of my life,
That is absolutely wonderful. Your first single on the charts was Release Me, which went into the Guinness Book of World Records for achieving 56 consecutive weeks on the charts, and beating what an accomplishment against your pal Ringo Starr and the rest of the Beatles.
Yes. I don't suppose it worried them too much because they're such a big band, and I think they wish me luck.
That's really wonderful. Well, certainly your music has transcended all generations, and people of all ages love you and love your music. And what is your favorite song, by the way?
Well, I have to say that Release Me started my career. Really was the one that I have to say is my favorite. All I can tell you is, I've had some songs that have been worldwide, like played in every dance hall in the world, like The Last Waltz. It's just an amazing song. And After the Loving, of course, is one of my big favorites.
And Les Bicyclettes de Belle Size, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, is it really? And the same person who wrote The Last Waltz wrote the Bicyclettes de Belle Size, yeah. And I love that song, too. I think it's quite a different, yeah.
What is the story behind that song and the lyrics?
Well, actually, Les Reed and Barry Mason, who wrote a lot of my hits in the early days, they were writing such wonderful songs for me and other people as well. The story is that they're the two greatest writers that came out of Great Britain and put my name on the map. I tell you what, with a lot of the songs that they wrote for me.
You're a giant in the music business. You have 64 gold albums and 35 platinum at last check. You have stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, Las Vegas Walk of Fame, and Leicester Walk of Fame in England.
Yeah, that's where I come from, Leicester, and I guess they put a star on there for me because I'm the son of Leicester.
That is absolutely wonderful, and you also performed for Queen Elizabeth. We honor her memory as well. Tell us about those occasions.
Yes, I have. I've not only performed for our Queen, but I performed for her mother as well, and the Duke of Edinburgh many times, and I've performed for royal family quite a lot. Yes.
And your new album also available on all the streaming services, and of course now vinyl records have come back too. Are we going to see it pressed on a vinyl record?
Yes, it's on vinyl. This definitely is on vinyl. And I'm going to say that we haven't chosen a title for it yet. I'm leaving that up to the record company because they know business better than I do. So let's see what happens. It's in the next couple of months.
That's wonderful. Well, my mom sends her love to you. She's a big fan, as I am, and all of us here at 790 KBC love you and look forward to seeing you there at the Saban Theater, the Last Waltz Tour. Engelbert Humperdinck in concert at the Saban Theater in Beverly Hills, June 14th. Tickets on sale at wheremusicmeetsthesoul.com. Engelbert Humperdinck, it's always a great thrill, a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
You're welcome, sir. Bye-bye.
Happy birthday, 89th birthday tomorrow for Engelbert Humperdinck. Once again, the Last Waltz Tour coming to the Saban Theater in Beverly Hills, June 14th. Tickets on sale now at wheremusicmeetsthesoul.com. Recapping the day on Wall Street, we have another winner here. The winning streak continues for the time being, despite a lot of concerns about the economy and tariffs and so forth, but some rays of sunshine that this will get resolved. The Dow moving higher by 84 points today, settling at 40,753. The S&P 500 of 35 at 5604, and the NASDAQ of 264 points at 17,710. Tech stocks leading the rally today on better-than-expected earnings news from Meta, for example. That stock popped more than $23 at $572 and change. Also, we got the news from Microsoft, also boosting that stock by more than $30 at the close today at $425 and change. After the bell today, it was Apple that got the spotlight and came in with earnings today that, looks like they exceeded analyst expectations, but the company's closely watched services division came up a bit light versus what analysts were expecting. Apple stock had closed slightly higher today, up 82 cents at $213 and changed down about $8 in after-hours trading at $204.47. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and then stay tuned at 6 o'clock this evening. I'll be on the air with the CEO of the Union Rescue Mission, Mark Hood, for the Just Help One radio show and podcast presented by the Union Rescue Mission. You can support the Union Rescue Mission at justhelpone.org. And I'll be back again tomorrow at 4. We'll have Dr. Muhammad Al-Aryan, the famed economist, will be live with me tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock right here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Nightly Scroll with Haley Caronia.
I'm Haley Caronia. I scroll with the homies here in the live chat, and I love my long scrolls on my phone at night. The show is literally called Nightly Scroll. My screen time has reached astronomical levels, but I do it to get all of the videos and all of the content that you won't find anywhere else. I don't want to be surrounded by an echo chamber, so I hope you join me. Someone just said the show is great. Keep it up. Thank you. I will.
Nightly Scroll with Haley Caronia. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.